Hi, my name is Jaden, and I'm an incoming senior at Foster High School. Today, I will be sharing with you guys my story. The word lazy has been a word historically used to refer to the work ethic of Black people. Why do we as a people who built the foundation of this country and carried this economy on our backs for hundreds of years receive this title? The answer dates back hundreds of years, but most would simply say because we are poor. 18.8% of Blacks are in poverty, the highest of any race in America. And despite what bootstrap rhetoric may say, being poor does not equate to laziness. In most cases, it means opposite. My story today is a story of African Americans and our transition into the American economy from commodity to consumer. I will be covering how, despite our incessant hard work, we are still the poorest per capita, how that came to be, and the systems that are responsible for our generational lack of wealth. So to set the foundation, for over 200 years, we had been contributing to the financial success of white people. So on June 13th, 1865, when we were freed with ownership of nothing and no financial assets of our own, the fruits of our labors were theirs. This is especially important when considering that these were now the people that we were expected to compete against. The way our society is set up, the means of production, in this case, things like tools, machinery, and anything else used to grow or produce crops, are privately owned. To put these tools to use and accomplish anything at all, labor is required. And the important idea here is that the owners of things like tools, machines, land, and natural resources controlled everything, and they were exclusively white. The way they control everything is by paying a laborer to operate the machine or use a tool, and then collect the resource. The laborer cannot avoid this because they don't own the hoe, the plow, or the land. And so with ownership of nothing, the only thing they can do is offer their labor, which is both a virtually profitless and unsustainable lifestyle. Important things to take away from this section are ownership, who owns what and what that means, specialization in our skills in terms of what we came out of slavery with, means of production, the thing that separates the employer from the laborer, and in labor as the one thing that every able-bodied person can offer. It's impossible to talk about all of this without talking about sharecropping. For anyone unfamiliar with it, it was a system that came about after slavery was abolished, and the right to use the means of production was sold to laborers in exchange for a large share in whatever they harvested, as well as having to pay off a local merchant for resources that were loaned to them on credit that carried extremely high interest rates. This was a predatory debt system that served as a black entry into the credit system in the US and eventually led to sharecroppers being forced to work for the landowners and pay off their debt to the merchants for the rest of their lives. Credit is a really important concept to understand because it is a system that is used by the poorest and richest people in the world. The only difference is in how the rich and the poor use it. Credit is a borrowing system where one party borrows money from a second party that takes on debt with the promise to settle the debt by returning the money with interest at a later, predetermined date. This system works because the party lending the money trusts that the second party will pay it back. Because of interest and the idea that you would be paying more than you borrowed, credit should be used to invest and serve as an opportunity to own profitable things that you would not otherwise have the money for. In most situations, that second party is not a sharecropper and is instead a bank. Historically, Blacks have not had access to capital or the opportunity to take out good loans to invest with. This is because in order to be approved for a loan, you need to show that you will be able to pay it back with or without your investment turning a profit. To demonstrate this, you need to have collateral, good credit, and an income that can support the debt that you're taking on, all of which were difficult things for Black people to obtain at the time. Not to mention the inequality and prejudice that exists and still exists in the banking system. This made not only upward socioeconomic mobility difficult for Black people to achieve through business, housing, and stocks, but left very little to be inherited from generation to generation and contributes to the lack of generational wealth we see in the Black community today. In 1960, the median income was $51,000 and a home cost $98,000, all in today's dollars. Today, a house has a median value of $210,000, a number that salaries have not been able to keep up with, as the national household average sits at just $73,000. This means it was easier to buy a house then, and it also means that we as a race were systemically deprived of the opportunity to participate in a more fair housing market, a familial foundation piece, and a profit from appreciation, if we were to sell, of course. The house we did get were in redline neighborhoods, and they don't hold the same value. Important things to take away from this section are credit, access to capital, investments, and then debt/interest. So with ownership being arguably the hardest achievement for a Black person in America, I turn to the next best chance at upward socioeconomic mobility: education. Up until our freedom, it was illegal for Black people in this country to learn to read or write. And so moving into the Jim Crow era, where more Blacks than ever had a chance at a degree, this should have been a rise of the Black middle class. This evidently was not the case. Segregation and the absence of a truly equal education meant that Black schools had far fewer resources like money or books, far less educated teachers, and far less opportunities. It's also important to understand the foundation of a Black student at this time. The adults of most families of the time had been deprived of a formal education themselves, did not have educational resources at home, and were working long hours. Education is a form of human capital and remains extremely important when talking about upward socioeconomic mobility and building generational wealth. The higher paying careers require, for the most part, a higher level of education. Unsurprisingly, during this time, a large portion of Black students still remained uneducated. And so for most, the only form of human capital we possessed was labor. What these things look like now. Black people have accrued debt so much so that it outtotals our liquidated assets. The percentage of Black homeowners and home values do not align with that of the percentage of white homeowners and their home values. We still are unable to take out loans, and we still suffer from bad credit because of a predatory banking system, and a banking system that still, to be honest with you, does not trust Black people. The educational system is still as flawed as ever. So the next time that you hear this term lazy, remember that these systems predated welfare or any other form of governmental assistance for Blacks. Black people are not lazy. We are resourceful. And with more Black people than ever going to college and buying homes, we will prove that despite these systems, we will do what we have always done: prevail.